Hey you guys, it's Peter and welcome to my channel, Peter Watches TV, where I cover all the TV, all the reality TV, all the true crime, all the trending series on Netflix, Apple TV, HBO Max, Peacock, Paramount, everywhere. I cover all the shows. I am ready for the fall lineup of the new shows to be released. I'm so excited about it. Although somebody reached out to me and told me that Bachelor in Paradise is actually not coming back until 2025, so I'm very upset about that. But other than that, I am having so much fun over here on this channel. Thank you guys so much for subscribing to this channel and keeping up with the shows that I'm watching and sharing your opinions about it. So many of you guys are like sharing your opinions about the same shows, and it's like, oh, that made me think about something in a different way or whatever. And I'm just having so much fun over here. As you guys know, I love watching TV. So today I want to talk about the new Hulu documentary. I believe it came out in June, and it is called Perfect Wife: The Mysterious Disappearance of Sherri Papini, whose name I thought was Sherri Panini for about half of the series. I was like, did Sherri Panini invent the panini sandwich? Because I'm very confused about this. But anyway, let me tell you about how I found out about the show. I'm actually kind of surprised it wasn't on my radar. I didn't know anything about this show. And my cousin picks me up once a week to like go run errands and stuff. And so we always talk about TV shows. She and I watch typically the same TV shows, and so then we'll talk about them. And so we were running around yesterday, and she was like, did you see the documentary on Hulu about the woman and her kidnapping? And I was like, what are you talking about? This is going to be a spoiler video, so if you don't want to know what happens with this case, stop it now, go watch it. It's 3 episodes. Each episode is like an hour long. It's fantastic, okay? It is one of the best true crime documentaries I've watched in a long time. Go watch it, and then come back here and watch this video. So anyway, Caroline and I were running around, and she was like, did you see this Perfect Wife documentary about the woman that faked her own kidnapping? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then I got home and I reached out to you. So for those of you that don't know, I have a true crime book club that I run with my good Judy Mel. Hey Mel, how are you? It's over on Facebook. I will link the link below if you want to join it. And we pick a book every month to read. So we both keep up on a lot of true crime. And so I texted Mel and I was like, have you heard of this Perfect Wife on Hulu, the Sherri Papini case? And she was like, yeah, I've been following it from the very beginning when it first happened. And I was like, oh, I didn't know anything about it. I don't have any clue how I missed this entire story. So anyway, and in all honesty, I love to go into a true crime documentary, especially a series that I know nothing about, because then it's like more interesting to me, right? So I sat down last night and I started watching it, and then I took a nap when when I got up. I watched the last 2 episodes. It is so good, you guys, and so bizarre. I mean, I think part of it for me was that my cousin went into this whole thing, I mean, about that she faked her, so I already knew she faked her kidnapping, but if you read the synopsis, it already says that. So anyway, the documentary is called Perfect Wife: The Mysterious Disappearance of Sherri Papini, and it came out June 2024, and it is 1 season, and it's 3 episodes. And you can also, I guess, watch it on Disney. I didn't know that. Keith and Sherri Papini's seemingly idyllic family life is shattered when Sherri vanishes from their Northern California neighborhood, triggering the frenzied search that becomes news around the world. Okay, so it's 3 episodes. It was released June 20th of 2024. I want to go in here on the Wikipedia page to the Sherri Papini kidnapping hoax, is what it's referred to. And I just want to read you like the 3 paragraphs that it has, so that you guys kind of have the background story if you haven't watched the documentary. Okay, Sherri Papini is an American woman who disappeared on November 2nd, 2016, reportedly while out jogging a mile from her home in Redding, California. Papini was 34 years old at the time. She reappeared 3 weeks later. I think it was 22 days that she was gone. Papini, she reappeared 3 weeks later on Thanksgiving Day. I know it was 22 days because I watched the documentary just last night. November 24th, having been reportedly freed by her captors at 4:30 that morning, still wearing restraints, chains, and bands on her, the plastic ties, while still wearing restraints on the side of County Road 17 near Interstate 5 in Yolo County, about 150 miles south of where she disappeared. The case garnered major media attention. Law enforcement experts cited doubts as to her story because of the unlikely details and inconsistencies of the reported abduction. In August 2020, she stood by her story when questioned by a federal agent and detective from the Shasta County Sheriff's Office. She received over $30,000 from the California Victim Compensation Board between 2017 and 2021. On March 3rd, 2022, Papini was arrested on federal charges arising from her fabrication of the abduction. She had reportedly been staying with her former boyfriend, James Reyes during the time she was supposedly missing and had harmed herself in order to give credence to her lies. 6 weeks after her arrest, Papini signed a plea deal admitting that she had orchestrated the hoax. She pleaded guilty to one count of mail fraud and one count of making false statements. In September 2022, she was sentenced to 18 months in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release, in order to pay $300,000, including restitution, to cover the cost of the police investigation. Okay, I was blown away by this. The damage that this woman did to her family, to her children, to the time and efforts it took to the police investigation that they could have been spending on other cases was just unbelievable to me. And going into this, so the breakdown of the episodes is this. The first episode is really about her disappearance and them being very worried about it. Her husband, Keith, being very, very worried about it. And really a lot of speculation about the condition of their marriage and allegations that he had been abusive to her and that maybe she had ran away and where was she, and this search, this media hunt, this frenzy trying to find her. The second episode is partly that and then her reappearance of her coming back and doing interviews with the police and things like that. The third episode is basically the police working with the FBI and them finding this James Reyes who, and the way that they find him is through pictures of how she described the closet in the room where she was kept is identical to the closet in his home that they get from a Facebook picture. I mean, it's mesmerizing how they do this stuff, right? And a table that he had. And so he basically tells him the whole story, that she had a burner phone, that she sent him instructions of where to pick her up, and that they were communicating through burner phones, and that she stayed with him for 22 days, that he wasn't keeping her there. He never had any charges filed against him, and that, and she came out and said that it was two Hispanic women that had came, it was one older and one younger, that had come and taken her and they branded her on her back. I think the word was Exodus that she had on her back. You couldn't really tell, but they kept on showing the word Exodus, so I'm assuming that's what it was. That she had branded on her back. She had bruises on her face. Her nose was broken. She had bruises all over her body. And so then it was also this whole idea of these racist allegations, and she had had a history of writing this blog that she said she never wrote, but it came out later that she did write this blog post from like years and years and years ago when she was in high school about the fact that she had gotten into a fight with this Hispanic girl and beaten her up, and her dad was proud of her. And so it went back to this whole part of like her being extremely offensive to the Hispanic and Latino community and being, it just was, the story is so bizarre, you guys can't even make sense of it. And so what they find out is in interviewing this James Reyes guy that was her ex-boyfriend, that she had stayed in contact with him and that she stayed there the whole time, and she told him to go out, and she had actually gone and looked online. They, like the FBI agent found this receipts and screenshots of these things where she had gone and looked up these branding materials. So she had him go buy the branding materials and she had him brand this for her on her back. And then he would like hold a hockey stick and she would run into it. She would like run into the wall to like give herself bruises and wounds and things like that. She had always like scabs and rashes on her arms, and they found out later it was from her like intensively cleaning his apartment and things like that, or his house. So it was all her own doing that you find out. What's interesting to me is that you can take a situation and you can still be like, yeah, but, okay? Because when you're watching it, the husband just has kind of, I mean, until the very end, like, I don't know if it's the editing of the documentary or whatever, but until the very end, he seems very normal, very concerned about his kids, very caring about his kids. But through the majority of the documentary, he seems a little off-putting. Like, even in his interactions with the police at the beginning and trying to get his name cleared and say, like, I have nothing to do with this, it's like he's kind of joking. And so people speculate that he did something to his wife. And then when it was that she came back and he didn't do anything to his wife, then it was like he was a part of the hoax. And then when it came out that he wasn't part of the hoax, it was that he was abusive to her, when there's no evidence of that. Even though she said it to like one friend. The one piece was that she said something about the fact that he hit her in the face, but then it turned out that they were at a party and they were playing Wii, and other people like saw it, and he like went like that with the Wii paddle and it hit her in the face. Other people saw it. It wasn't like him intentionally hitting her. There's literally no evidence that this was an abusive relationship whatsoever. And yet she's kind of used that defense. Now, I will tell you what's interesting is while I was reading articles last night, because there's another documentary my cousin said, and I can't find it anywhere, but I'll watch it if it's out there. But apparently she's coming out in 2025 with her own documentary talking about this. Of course she is. This is always how it goes, right? Telling her side of the story. What's interesting is when you watch the police investigations with her at the end, The one thing that's interesting is, like, the lead investigator, he says that he should have called Keith and warned him as a friend, but as a lead investigator, that wasn't his job to let him know that he was about to ruin his life by telling the situation. Even when they give her, I mean, they give her so many fair warnings of, like, we're going to tell what happened, okay? Like, and she's like, okay. And then, like, even they give, like, she and the husband, because she's like, can I talk to him for a couple minutes? And she's like, maybe James was involved somehow, but, like, he didn't know about it. And I don't want them, she keeps on going with this story of, she doesn't want this woman, she doesn't want this woman to be arrested that saved her life. Like, the younger one was nice to her, the older one was mean to her, and she doesn't want that. There are no women, right? It was at this point when I was watching it that I'm like, you know, it's interesting that they go back and they talk a little bit. Her sister is a big part of the documentary, and they talk a little bit about, her sister talks about, like, their childhood, but just briefly in there, and about how she always wanted attention and she always wanted to be loved. Girl, who don't? Okay? Like, we all want attention and we want to be loved. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, but there's asking for it, there's going to counseling and therapy for it, there's appropriate ways of saying, I want validation, I want love, and then there's faking your own kidnapping, being gone from your kids that you act like you care so much about for 22 days, and then your only response to your husband is, you never even came to look for me and find me. That's her only response to it, her only bit of remorse whatsoever. She's taken very little remorse. After the situation, she's come out when she was like, she pled guilty, which is, so it never went to trial, okay? She pled guilty, which is how she got 18 months and had to pay $300,000, all this kind of stuff, in restitution for the $30,000 that she had been given as a victim of a kidnapping. But she, at that time, seemed very tearful and said that she was really sorry for what she had done. But even to her husband, like he said, when she came home and she said, my attorney told me about the plea deal, I'm going to take the plea deal. And he was like, okay, but then that means you're admitting that you did this. And she's like, yeah, but I'm only going to be in jail for like 6 months. It won't really be that bad. I can go on with my life. And he was like, in that moment was when he was like, oh, she did this. Like, she did this. And it's not just about the fact that she did it. It's about, and I'm going to get to the kids in just a second, because that was the point where I was like, oh no. It's not just about the fact that she did it. It's about the fact that she, like, calculatedly planned this whole thing, sent a care package to her ex, okay, with burner phones, told him where to pick her up, had her kids dropped off to school that whole day, even texted her husband to come home for lunch, and acted like she was asking him to have sex with her. All this to the police investigations. I mean, it was so bizarre. And the whole situation, not to mention she was having, like, numerous conversations with numerous men that she was allegedly possibly having even at least emotional, possibly physical affairs with. And then the man is the one that got painted so ugly in this whole situation, and everybody was speculating that he was part of this, and he had nothing to do with it. You know, and maybe that will come out in her story. Maybe there will be some whole storyline about his abusive nature, and we'll find that out then. And at that point, then I will judge that part of the story. But as of now, there's no evidence for it whatsoever. And I just looked at this man at the end of it, and I felt so bad for him. At the end of the documentary, they show him with his kids at, like, this petting zoo. And it's just such a sweet moment. And his son's got on, like, this cowboy hat and stuff. And you can tell through the whole thing, she had very little concern for her kids. And at the very end of it, this is where I was kind of like, well, he keeps on going back. You can tell his love is so loyal to her. Like, his friend says to him, at one point, he goes to his friend and says, I don't know what to do. Because when the police and the FBI, like, or the police tell her about what they know about that she faked it, they don't arrest her because they don't really have valid evidence at that point. They don't come out and have valid evidence until they have phone records from the burner phones, and that's when they can arrest her. But until then, they don't really have valid evidence. So her husband's like, you can't stay here. Like, I don't know what to do with this. And so he goes in and consults a friend. And his friend says to him, and I think this is such an interesting way of thinking and such a mature way of thinking when you talk about true crime and victim stories and things like that. And his friend says to him, you can hold to something to the effect of, like, you can hold to what you know and be angry about that. But what if you find out later that this is just, like, I mean, if this guy comes out and the police ask him, like, did you kidnap? And he's like, no, she came on her own free will. Well, wouldn't a kidnapper say that? So he's like, if it comes out later and you find out that she truly was a victim of kidnapping and you pushed her away, aren't you going to feel bad about that? And so that, again, is her emotional manipulation through reality, because that's his friend saying that to him. That's not his friend manipulating him. That's the reality of the situation. And so he thinks about it. And so she lives with him for another 3 years and is at home with the kids and stuff. So after the fact that she's arrested and she takes this plea deal and stuff, he finds out through his daughter, because he's, like, not feeling good when he pushes back from the bed and he's not feeling good. And his daughter says to him, why don't you just do what mommy does? And he's like, what are you talking about? The daughter at the time is like 6 or 7, okay, or 8 maybe. And she says, well, when mommy is sick, she tells us to inhale rubbing alcohol. What he finds out is that she was keeping her kids perpetually sick and going to the doctors. I mean, this is partly like Munchausen by proxy and doing all this kind of stuff, but like, I mean, you want to talk about the mental health issues here, which they really don't address in the documentary at all. They don't really address her ever getting a psychiatric evaluation, which is interesting to me that they don't talk about that in the documentary. You would think that a woman that hoaxed her entire kidnapping, left her kids for 22 days, all this kind of stuff, left her husband, that there will be some psychiatric evaluation. They talk about therapy with her and that she went to therapy twice a week and there were 2-hour sessions that her husband with her sister went with her sometimes, all kinds of stuff. But they don't talk about a psychiatric evaluation after the fact that she's arrested. They don't talk about her mental health. They talk a little bit about her being raised. I was like, this is a woman that has some severe mental health issues to go to these lengths for whatever reason. I mean, they ask her point blank, like, did you do this to get away from your husband because he's abusive? And she just shakes her head. Like, she hasn't come out yet and said that. So I don't know if that's coming out in the next documentary, but there's no evidence that he's abusive whatsoever. He made some abusive statements and arguments and fights. And he's even like, yeah, all people say that when we're arguing and fighting, but I never acted on it. There's no evidence that I've acted on it. He passed a polygraph test, and the boyfriend passed a polygraph test. There was another boyfriend that was involved that she had met, or boyfriend, or I don't know, acquaintance that she had met through Detroit. So anyway, at the end of it, he shares, this is where I just was like, I can't, I'm done with this. Like, this woman is like, she has got severe problems. And, I mean, being so abusive to these kids and stuff like that. She would like tie a string over her kids' heads and she would soak rags, allegedly. This is what her husband says, okay? That he never reported it. There hasn't been anything done about this. He just reported it in the documentary, but there hasn't been any like files charged or anything about this. But allegedly, what he was told by his daughter and his son was that she would soak bags in rubbing alcohol, keep them in like Ziploc bags and tie strings around their necks so that they were constantly inhaling rubbing alcohol so that it would constantly keep them sick. The thing about this is when people want to speculate. I mean, I watch so much true crime. When people want to speculate about like stories like that, like it's not true or it made it up, who comes up with that? Like, that is such a bizarre thing. Like, would you just sitting around tomorrow, if you were writing a book, would you just think, I'm going to have the villain of the book tie a string with a Ziploc bag holding a soaked rubbing alcohol? I mean, no one would even think of that. So, I mean, the specificness of the nature of it almost implies the truth of it. And at that point, I just was like, these innocent, sweet kids that you literally have just like, I mean, run through it. She's now having supervised visits. Apparently, I read up articles last night. Apparently, she's talking to them once a week on the phone. He has full custody and they are divorced as of 2023. This whole case went on for like 5 or 6 years, which is crazy, right? And the amount of police investigation and time that was spent on it, it's just baffling to me. It's also baffling to me, like I said, that they don't discuss much about the mental health. I mean, you're talking about somebody that has severe mental health issues that went to these lengths, right? And just one day, staying with his ex-boyfriend for 22 days, she's just like, I'm ready to go home, take me home. And so it's like, what did she do it for? You know, why did she paint this picture of these Hispanic women in such a racist tone? Why did she do these things to these kids? Why did she let her husband hang out there to dry as the main suspect that was abusing his wife, you know? And he goes in at the end and he shows these books that she has. And she has the Elizabeth Smart book that, you know, the woman that was kidnapped and was, you know, in captivity for a long time. And then he goes in there and he talks about Gone Girl. And he talks about I can't remember Tara's last name, but they went to the same high school. Anyway, so he talks about it, and it's like she picked and chose different parts of each story and applied it to make up her own story. That is so sick. Like, seriously? Like, it's so bizarre, right? It's so bizarre. I just was like, I watched this documentary, and I was like, I just kept on thinking, like, I felt so bad. Like, her best friend of years and years, like, since they were in high school, is, like, interviewed. I felt so bad for her, because she's like, you don't really know somebody. You think you do, but you don't really know somebody. And that's just not really the case. You know, I wanted to reach through the TV and be like, you do know people. You do. This is just one example of somebody that you didn't know, right? But you do know people. It's like when people get out of relationships and they go, none of it was real. That's not true. There were real moments in any relationship. You know, don't just let this one relationship with this woman that had severe mental health issues ruin that. And her sister is like, so just like all over the place with this. And she's like, I'll always love her, but no, I don't stand by it. Actually, the sister is the one that's in the documentary. She's the one that encouraged the husband to file for divorce, because she's like, she says there's interviews that have been done, and I read them last night, and the sister told the husband, if you don't do it, she'll continue to do this again, because this is who she is. Well, then that implicates a serious mental health issue that needs to be dealt with, and I'm not sure that it has been. I didn't read in any articles, and nowhere in the documentary they talk about any severe mental health treatment that she is receiving at this time. You know, but it's pretty scary. And he was worried about his kids at one point, that the kidnappers, I thought this was interesting that they didn't address this, that at one point he's worried that these women are going to come in when he doesn't know that it's a hoax. They're staying in this cabin, this gorgeous cabin, right, that his friends have. And he's like afraid up at night that these women are going to come and get his kids or finish a job with his wife. But years later, you find out that his wife is the kidnapper, and he's not worried that she's going to come and do something to the kids when she was allegedly trying to make them sick every day of their life. I would be terrified. I would have moved cross country and want to be notified about her whereabouts at all times, you know? He does say in there, though, that like the kids are asking about like changing the name. He's like, I'm not going to change my name because of what I did. There's no reason that I should. And I 100% agree with him, you know? There's no reason. And I think that's a lot of things that a lot of family members of situations like this do. But as far as we know, he didn't do anything wrong, you know? And he and his kids, I mean, they really suffered hardcore. The story was so bizarre to me. I just felt bad for everybody involved. And in all honesty, as crazy as it was, and as easy as it was for me to really dislike this woman, there was a part of me that just was like, this is so out there that I kind of feel bad for you, because somebody, like, you really need help. Like, something is so off. Like, the lack of remorse, the fakeness of the remorse when she did show it. The police literally put her in a room and gave her all the evidence, and she was still like, no, like, there's no truth. I mean, I'm like, literally, they have the evidence, lady. You know they do, right? I mean, it's just, it's delusion on a level I have never witnessed before. So anyway, if you watch it, let me know what you think. I thought it was fantastically done. I thought that it explained everything. I thought that it really went in the back end and showed the story of the victims, the husband, the kids, the sister, the best friend. I thought it really shared their story, the other family members that were shown. I thought it was really conclusive, and it showed the ending of all of it. The only thing that left out for me, and maybe it's because it's not part of the story, is where's the mental health treatment? I mean, she obviously needs it. You know, if they can mandate prison and they can mandate all this other kind of stuff, and she was afforded the police investigation $300,000, do you think that maybe we could implement maybe some mandatory mental health treatment for her? It doesn't seem like she's going to seek it out on her own, you know? Anyway, let me know what you thought in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.